I didn't want to share my whole medical history with the world, although now I am. But
But can you imagine before every dance? Sorry, I can't
Sorry.
because my. And the minute we embraced, I mean, it was like I couldn't breathe. My head was like I was twisting my head so far away, and like whenever we would turn, I tried to take a breath and hold. It was. But I think there's a piece that we haven't touched on yet, which for me is like 60% of the reasons why I might say yes or no.
Okay, and what is that?
All right,
We're back.
we are back, and I'm so excited for our topic
Oh,
today.
Today's a spicy topic.
It is. Oof, we're gonna get real.
Yeah, we're gonna get real.
Rejection.
But in a great way. I think people are gonna learn a lot.
Mhm.
Maybe even shift perspective a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
which can really
Hopefully.
improve the experience.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. Or maybe not.
I think just the more we talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
the more we shed light on it.
Yes.
That's just a start.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today? Should we tell people?
I hate to use the R word, but it is what it is, and we got to call out the elephants in the room. Rejection.
Rejection.
How do we handle rejection in social spaces? Because tango is such a social experience.
Mhm.
And we go into it thinking, we deserve to be in the space. We pay for the space and we have certain expectations to what we're going to get out of this.
Yes.
But it's a space where people make so many choices for many different reasons. So it'd be great to unpack why and shed some light on that. And I think.
But when we're talking about rejection, we're talking about like specific type of rejection when you're asking somebody to dance.
Yes.
And they say no. So maybe we're not talking about like rejection,
Romantic rejection,
which we are going to talk about dating in tango. That's a future episode. But today it's just specifically you've tried to indicate you want to dance with someone and they have said no in some way.
And so it all starts from the moment you ask someone to dance. So I'd be curious to know, Melody, how should people ask when you're ready to dance? How should you ask, whether you're a leader or a follower?
So I think this is going to depend on the setting you're in, right? It's going to be different if you're at a practica or at a milonga, and maybe even the atmosphere of the milonga. But I personally like Cabaceo. And for people that are new to tango, that's going to be where you make eye contact, and then the person receiving that is going to nod if they want to dance, or maybe they're just going to
look away.
Or maybe they're going to engage in conversation with somebody really intensely and try to signal to people or even one person that this is not the time that they would like to dance, right? So typically I like Cabaceo because I feel like it's a softer rejection. And it's not necessarily I don't want to ever dance with you. It may just be like, right now, I don't want to dance with you for whatever reason, right? And we'll talk about the reasons we're saying no in a little bit, right? What about you?
For me, it depends more so on how well I know the person. I think with my friends, Cabaceo or verbally asking can work. It can be beautiful when you catch someone's eye from across the room in a crowded space and you both indicate that you clearly want to dance, and it's a very
you were looking for each other.
You were looking for each other, and that can be very nice. Or if I don't know someone very well as well, and the idea of the Cabaceo is to try to prevent the challenges that come sometimes with rejection, right? The challenge with the Cabaceo is based off of eye contact. And socially, it's completely okay to look around the room, to look at someone. Maybe you're thinking, maybe you like what they're wearing and you're staring at them a little bit longer. Maybe you're just scanning the room and you happen to pass by their eyes. And the problem is if you look at someone more than a millisecond, they might assume that's a Cabaceo.
Yeah, that's very true.
And sometimes it's like, no, it has to be a very intentional stare and a very obvious feature on your face. Maybe your eyebrows are raised, maybe your head is tilted to accompany it. And then, if it's an acceptance, then it's like, yeah, let's do it. If it's not, it's a smile and maybe keep looking, and we'll talk about maybe how to accept when that happens or when it doesn't happen. So I like either. I also don't mind being asked verbally. However, if it's a friend that I know, if it's someone that I've already made the connection with, that we like to dance with each other, and you ask me verbally, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't know you, or actually maybe I don't want to dance with you for whatever reasons, and you ask me verbally, now I'm put in a very tough spot.
Yes.
Because how do I say no? I don't want to hurt your feelings. I don't want to embarrass the both of us because we're surrounded by people. And it's a tricky thing to
It
navigate.
is. But I think if you do ask verbally, I think you really have to be okay with somebody saying, no, thank you, not right
Mhm.
now. And I'm going to go one further because I think we have this general rule that if you've said no to somebody, you have to sit the whole set out. I'm going to say I will totally dance with somebody else if I said no verbally to someone. I think that's the beauty of Cabaceo is that you can gently say no and keep looking and
Mhm.
dance with someone else, right? So if you are putting someone in the spot where they have to then say, no, not right now, I think you also need to be okay with them going on to dance with someone else.
Yeah.
Even if they said to try to be polite, even if they said, no, I'm just a little tired. Well,
I think so. I know. Um, from a follower's perspective, especially in the US, we
Mhm.
don't, and I know we'll touch on it a bit more, but um, you know, it's sort of like at work when you have to like take some time off because you have like a doctor's appointment or something. You can just say, I need this time off. You don't need to explain to anybody where you're going, what you're doing, how you're doing it. And what happens is we get caught up in trying so hard to not say why. And it's so hard for us to just say, oh, no, no, thank you, not right now. We end up saying, oh, my feet hurt. Oh, I don't really like the song. And then someone who maybe you've been dying to dance with comes along and you're like, crap.
yes.
I've already set myself up. I
Yes.
can't get up now. Or
Yes.
I do get up and then I look really bad.
Mhm.
It's so horrible.
Yes. Or, and this is one of those things, preference, like maybe to this orchestra. Maybe I
Oh,
want to dance with you, but I want to dance to Milonga or to Vals or a specific
yeah.
orchestra for tango, but I didn't want to dance this one because I had somebody else in mind. Well, then going to dance with that other person is totally fine. So
Right.
I think verbal is okay if we're friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of the people I'm thinking about, if they were to ask and I said no verbally, I think they would all be okay with me then dancing with somebody else. They would be understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe in the beginning, people aren't as they're when they're newer to it, newer to relationships. And I would say, unfortunately, if anybody that I don't know or don't know well asks me verbally, it's probably a hard pass
Mm-hmm.
because I think that they probably don't
They don't know yet.
appreciate the customs
Mm-hmm.
actually. That and I would assume, okay, if somebody's asking me verbally, are they going to respect the ronda? Or are they going to be the type of person who's also not going to appreciate that custom and weave in and out of traffic?
That's a
Um,
really great point.
yeah. So it's also
Yeah.
protection,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's a protective mechanism. So
And I think what, regardless if you cabeceo or you ask,
mhm,
it's the intention that you have behind it.
mhm,
And to your point around recognizing the custom, either form is an invitation.
yes,
It's an invitation to invite someone to do something with you. And that implies that there's a choice to accept or to not accept.
hmm,
But I think we fall into the habit of making a request with a question mark at the end.
yes,
And so we say, do you want to dance? But really we mean, hey, we should dance right now. And so when the person says no, you're like, what? What do you mean? Why not? But if it was an invitation, if I mailed you an invitation in the mail and you said no, I'd be like, hey, that sucks, but maybe next time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what about you, John? How do you feel about this? What is your well, I think I know the answer because we're married, but what is your preferred
Way to be asked.
yes.
So, because I think tango is such a social thing for me, I think we go to, at least I go to Malongas. It's not necessarily just to go dance; it's to go see people and hang out with friends. I think it depends on how well I know you. If it's a friend and they want to come up and ask, that's totally fine. That's totally cool. I think we can have a conversation if I want to or not, and it'll be totally friendly. If I don't know you, I think Cabaseo is definitely preferred. But that being said, I also think as a leader, it's a little bit different. I think just culturally, I'm more inclined to accept dances. So it's a little more complicated because let's say there's a beginner that's there and they come up to me and ask me to dance at a milonga or something. Um, I'm much more inclined to say yes, just because I want to be friendly. I know tango
Mhm.
can, especially for beginners, can be a bit hostile. I mean, they're
Yes,
brave enough to go out to a milonga,
that's
which
true.
is can be very intimidating, especially if you're new and you don't know anybody, and you have the courage to ask someone. And I think that's I don't want that to be a very negative experience for them. So absolutely, I think I'll say yes. And I'm also not as concerned about being physically hurt,
That's also
in a
very
dance.
true. Yeah.
So that's not necessarily a concern. Plus, I've been dancing long enough where I feel like I have fun dancing with pretty much anybody. I can find some joy in there. So I'm not really worried too much about a gap in skill level or something like that. Um, but in general, I think Cabaceo is the way to go. And and I'm curious what you guys think about this. So there is, what do you guys feel about who initiates the Cabaceo? Is there like a
Mm.
particular kind of a thing where I get the impression that it's kind of on the leaders, it's on the leader to initiate Cabaceo, and the followers are kind of scanning and seeing which leaders are,
Mirada,
yeah.
right? Okay,
The other
so
half of
yes,
it.
yes,
The
the other
first
half.
half.
So traditionally, the follower is scanning, right? And she is looking. Okay, I'm gonna say this is where I might deviate from Códigos. I think either end should be able to initiate. I think where it gets a little bit murky is when you dance both roles.
Mm.
Right? So it's like and often when you're dancing both roles, you usually are dancing with people that dance both roles. Like
Mhm.
I feel like they're typically more open to it. So then it's like, okay, well, who is initiating the cabeceo? Are they now the leader? Right? Or I don't know. I might not have an answer to that. I know that I totally cabeceo leaders went and then we dance and I'm following, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm just like, "Pff, I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'm gonna look for it. I mean, I'm still not gonna verbally ask them, but I will initiate cabeceo for sure.
Yeah. I think both parties can definitely initiate it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's okay. We've moved to a phase now in tango where social norms are not as strict as they were before, where,
Mm-hmm.
as far as I know, I haven't personally been to Buenos Aires yet, but as I understand it historically, like women, let's say,
We're on one.
followers would sit on one side
Yes,
and men would sit on the other side, but
and couples
and
would sit
couples would, there you
on
go.
another
And
end.
now it's like a very one version of society, and now
Mm-hmm.
our society is a lot more mixed,
Mm-hmm.
and our social norms have changed
Yes.
or have become more diverse. And so I think as it's okay to maybe be more verbal sometimes. So let's say, like you say, sometimes I'm leading or I'm
Mm-hmm.
following, and maybe I haven't even changed my shoes. Maybe I'm wearing heels and I want to ask you to lead. And I will say, hey, I would love to lead. Do
Mm.
you want to follow? Or with some of my friends who I know do both and we agree to dance together, I'll also say, hey, do you want to switch? And then
Mm.
clarify further, do you want to switch in song or from one
Mm-hmm.
song to the other?
Yes.
Because that also has its own dynamics, right?
Yes.
So I think sometimes it's okay to just say upfront what it is that we want.
Yes. Yes.
And so like the idea of the cabeceo isn't to say like you can't communicate verbally the things that you need. It's just to soften some of that initial like the initial barrier to getting on the dance floor. But once you've like accepted together the couple, then let's let's say negotiate how we're going to spend this next 15
Mm-hmm.
minutes together. And I
Yes.
think it's okay.
Yes. Well, and I want to caveat too. I want to add a little caveat about verbally asking.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we've established like, okay, we already have a relationship. We're more open to it, right? And that's still personal preference depending on the person. I will say the chataceo.
Mm.
Okay. I actually like the chataceo.
What's the chataceo melody?
So the chataceo is when you don't necessarily know someone and you go over and you start talking, maybe not with the initial aim of getting a dance from them. So you're not going over there to have like a cursory, like 1 minute conversation and then say, but would you like to dance? Right.
But is
But
that
it
what
is
happens?
sometimes it does. And I probably say no in those
Yeah.
scenarios. But if somebody comes over to actually start to develop a relationship, and then some songs come on and they say, oh, how do you feel about this orchestra? I feel like that's a nice,
That's a
gentle way.
great.
And again, still being willing and not offended if the other person says, you know what, I don't like this orchestra, or I was thinking of somebody else for this orchestra. I think that's okay. Because the chataceo can end up in a nice tanda where you're getting to know each other. It also could mean that they say no, but then they're more open to accepting your cabaceo later, right?
Right.
Because it is community. It's about meeting each other.
Mhm.
And I know we've all been in the situation where we have turned down a cabaceo from someone we know, maybe on a surface level, and then suddenly it seemed as though we were dead to them, right?
Mhm.
So as long as we're not creating that dynamic of saying no and like, you've offended me and I must shun you, then I think it's totally fine.
But what do you guys think? So I think we're speaking a bit from a local milonga perspective, where
Yes.
maybe it's the same people that you see whether you know them or not. But what happens if I'm at a festival or I'm at a marathon and sure there's people that I know, but there's also a lot of people that I don't know? Do I need to go make friends with everybody just to dance with them?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay. So I would say hopefully the organizer has created a welcoming environment. They are doing things, especially if they know people coming have not necessarily mingled before. So if they're doing things like a hello stranger dance or a combio dance, right? Encouraging mixing or doing the silly games that we do where they're like, fill up your dance card with as many names and win a prize, right?
Or a brunch.
Or doing a
Oh,
brunch.
that's right.
Yes.
Starting
Yes.
marathons.
Doing a
That's
brunch.
why I love marathons.
Yes. So, like, if they're doing things that are going to encourage mixing, if they're not doing things that are going to encourage mixing, I think the biggest mistake you can make is sitting at a table. Let's say you're following, sitting at a table with 5 followers.
Yes.
Same with leaders,
Yes.
right? It makes it very intimidating because then, like, is this right, John? If you go and you see like, let's say
Row.
5 followers sitting there and
And
you
you
try to cabaceo one, and then
to
4
like
of
have
them
like
think that it's
laser
you.
cabaceo skills
Yes.
to exactly target the person that.
Oh, I wonder if you're walking over and 2 of them stand up. That's
I've had that happen to me, and it was so embarrassing. I stood up, and they're like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, it was for the other person," and I had to sit back down. And now I've done it accidentally myself, and I will choose the person that stood up because I know that feeling. And then later on, I'll go back to the person, like, I'm so sorry. Obviously, the situation was horrible. I couldn't just leave them hanging.
Yeah.
So please, God, people, if
I sit. I stay seated
Yes,
until they are closer,
yes.
and I can tell that was
it's for
me.
you. Yep.
And also sometimes my eyesight isn't great. So then I think that I got a cabaceo, but I'm not 100%. So I'm like, I'm just going to sit there. This might confuse people sometimes if they're not used to the customs, but I'm like, no, until I know you were
you
asking
need to go
me, then
grab.
yes, then I will stand up.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think at a festival, like eating out with people, even if you haven't been invited, then invite people. Like
Right.
be the person to invite people. I think that's going to form those connections. If it's a festival, being in class. Like I personally would never go to a festival just to socially dance. I think that's a recipe for disaster. Also, it's like you have this opportunity
to learn from amazing
right?
instructors, yeah.
So I would be in class because you're ultimately going to meet people there, or get a room even with strangers. Share some rooms. That's going to help.
I wanted to add one thing about festivals and marathons is that I think it's really easy to get stuck in your own anxiety about getting dances and making your time worthwhile and getting your money's worth. But I think it's important to have that perspective that everybody feels that way, and for a lot of people, it's a bunch of strangers. So I think people going to festivals and marathons, they're all more receptive and they want to meet new people and they want to get dances with people they don't know. So I think
Depends on the marathon.
depends on the marathon, but I think on average people will be much more friendly than I think you expect,
Sure.
and so I think just being open to that is it can be successful.
Yeah, I think you're right.
What you're saying reminds me of what we said before, and that this is not just a dance.
Yes.
It's a social experience.
Yes.
And so if you go in with just the mindset that I'm going to get my dancing in for the next 4 to 5 hours, a lot of this becomes difficult.
Yes.
So you need to have that social mindset.
Absolutely.
I think we started to touch a bit on why people say no. And you were
We gotta
talking
talk
about
this.
preferences and styles.
Yes.
What are some of your preferences or styles for saying no? Or what have you seen to be certain reasons why people might say no?
Well, I can speak from my personal experience. I started dancing. I danced while pregnant. While I was pregnant, my abs separated, right? So then
what?
I had a diastasis. So a diastasis, essentially, if you have your abs here, they're connected by tissue. So that tissue can expand, and it's not muscular tissue, but it does maintain the strength in your core, support your back. So when you're pregnant, there's a lot of strain on this, obviously, because there's this baby filling up your abdomen. So it can separate, and it's natural that it separates. And then over time, naturally, usually it will close. But for me, I got sick and I was coughing really, really hard while I was, I don't know, 6 or 7 months pregnant. And I felt a rip.
Mm.
Oh, it was so
Why do we get
painful.
pregnant again? Why is it only on us to procreate?
It's so worth it. It is so worth it, I will say. But in that moment, like all of a sudden, I had no core support anymore. So I became very guarded, right? I could only dance with people I knew were going to be respectful, that I was not going to be pivoting everywhere. I had to protect my back. And I did dance until the end. But then afterwards, as I was trying to heal this, I still ended up with a 4-inch separation. So my core was not strong. So I would only dance with people that, like, I didn't want to share my whole medical history with the world, although now I am. but
Can you imagine before every dance? Sorry, I can't because
sorry,
my.
and here's what a diastasis is, and like, so I just didn't want to. So I danced with friends, people that I had already been dancing with. And then I had a surgery to fix it, which is wonderful. But that also meant that, like, there's some numbness in the abdomen. So I wasn't as perceptive. So then, because I couldn't even feel the lead sometimes, I would explain to my friends, like, oh, they knew I had a surgery. And I was like, I just can't perceive it as well. And it's recovered quite a bit. But still, like, if I'm dancing with somebody new, I don't want to have to be like, oh, well, I had a surgery and now I can't really feel in certain parts, and it's much better now. But I had to protect my body. And I know there are people that were like, oh, she thinks she's too good for me now. And they stopped talking to me entirely. I no longer existed. Or like there was an awkward moment. They thought I was cabaceoing them after years of being offended that I was not dancing with them. And I wasn't. I was just saying hi, right? It was that moment you were talking about. And I was like just saying hi. And they were like, and then they took the moment to say no in a way that was not very nice. And I was like, that wasn't a cabaceo anyway,
Sure, but
okay, So I think, like, you don't know if somebody has all of these things going on and what's happening in the background, or maybe they like slept wrong and their back hurts and they just want to protect their body, as a follow in particular.
Yes,
right?
Because we're the ones that's really
That
making the movement.
Yes, or like people are throwing baleos and they're throwing high baleos, and maybe you don't want to throw high baleos, right?
Yeah.
So that's like, for me, the other piece. And I just want to mention, because I think this is really interesting. I met my husband in Tango, right? We dated and we got married, and now we go out to dance. Sometimes we just want to dance together. Sometimes it's a date, right? And I just want to dance with my husband. And so we go back into the corner and we hide.
You need a neon sign saying we're on a date tonight.
We're on a date tonight, right? And like, friends that know this, they're like, hey, are you guys dancing with people tonight? And I would say 99% of the time we are. But it's just every once in a while. It's like, oh, we're celebrating our anniversary. Or we couldn't have a babysitter very often when the kids were young. So if we went out, we wanted to dance together, So that was the other piece of it. So it wasn't, you notice, none of this
Had
anything to do with anybody else except for me.
Yeah.
Which I find. What about you? What are the reasons
Very
you don't
similar
dance?
to, I have a lot of knee problems. I forget the syndrome that I have, but basically, like, my kneecap is almost too flexible. So I get a lot of like knee joint and hip joint problems. And there's certain leaders, and I think it's just with experience and also with intentionality in how they build their skill and how they build their technique, they lead movements that don't impose so much on my body. And later on, I think you kind of start to understand what that means.
Yeah.
but not everybody does this. And so I had to be very defensive a lot dancing. I had to play defensive following a lot, and I'd block certain movements to try to protect my body. And then after a while, I was like, you know what if I just only dance with the people that I know for sure aren't going to do this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's the key part. Sometimes you don't know for sure. Sometimes you can tell from watching. And that's also another important piece to asking someone to dance. Like, take the time to look on the dance floor. I spend at least the first 15 to 20 minutes when I enter any space watching the dance floor, seeing who's in the room, what's the energy like, who's around, and so that also means be mindful of how you are portraying yourself on the dance floor, because you can be inviting or disinviting people to want to dance with you. So for me, just from a physical perspective, that is a thing. And I will say, I have a friend who I think I used to squeeze under my arm without realizing, and that is so painful for the leader to like. I'm just thinking, I'm just gearing myself up.
I would push.
And push. Yeah. And I had a friend who very nicely said, oh, my shoulder really hurts from this thing. Do you mind just being a little light? And I just took that as, oh, yeah, for sure, I got you. And then later on, I realized, oh, I see. They were just. So there are ways that you can, try to protect, let's say. But physically, sometimes a lot of the reasons, I would say almost 30 to 40% of when I say no to someone or when I say yes is because I'm gauging how much strain this is going to put on my body, and like every step that you take in tango, you're using your body. If you're doing it right, you're using, and of course, over time it becomes easier, but it's hard to dance with someone who doesn't also use their body. And it's so much more physical work. And it's like, I didn't come here for a workout. So but it's hard. You can't tell a leader, I'm sorry, you don't use your body enough, so I can't dance with you. It's an awkward conversation to have, and it's hard to describe sometimes.
And like
or like the leaders who sometimes will lead you all these pivots, but they give you no support.
Oh my gosh!
And so
or they
it's
put you
all
on your heel.
you.
They're like pushing you back. Trying to
Or they'll pull you in very close, and then they'll pull you off your axis, so you can't ever be stable. So these small little tiny things that sometimes leaders don't recognize that they're doing, and I'm sure as a leader, I do things too that my friends are like, oh, can we not dance today, Amanda? And I get that. I try not to take it personal.
Well, and I will try. I'm actually more open to dancing with newer people that I haven't watched or nobody's like told me about dancing with them at a practica, because I can leave after one song and it's not rude, right? I can be like, okay, let's dance together for this moment, and then if not, it's okay. But I'll say there are some less me focused reasons I haven't danced with people, like really bad breath, or they don't wear deodorant. Like we gotta.
Sometimes you don't know
if you don't want to wear deodorant,
you
that's
embrace.
fine. Like, if you feel like you don't like the chemicals, but you better be washing it, because I don't want to go home smelling like another person.
I recently accepted a dance from someone, and visually they looked nice and it seemed interesting. I was like, sure, let's do it. And the minute we embraced, it was like I couldn't breathe. My head was like, I was twisting my head so far away, and like whenever we would turn, I tried to take a breath and hold. It was obviously I would never dance with this person again. I don't know. Is it my responsibility to tell them that? I don't know. But
there's no answer to this. And so there was a person who came to the DC area. They were visiting. They came from a country where you don't wear deodorant, and they needed just here, it wasn't a country where they wear a lot of perfume to cover it, but it was just not something that they normally did. And after a point, they actually did ask a friend of mine, I never have a problem dancing anywhere else I go. Like, what is it? And my friend was like, I I think you need to buy some deodorant. And they actually were like, oh, thank you for telling me this. I didn't know why people were not dancing with me. And then they didn't have this issue afterwards. So it's like if they're asking for feedback, but maybe we could just make a general rule, just freshen up down there.
Yes. You need to be self-aware.
You need to be self-aware.
And that's one thing I love with some hosts. They'll have mouthwash. They'll have spray-on deodorant in the bathrooms. Very nice.
Yes. I mean, we always have gum with us, and we always keep mints on the table just so people can have it. And on days that we're dancing we're not going to eat a bunch of like Chinese garlic chives because you smell like Chinese garlic
Yeah.
chives for the rest of the night, you
And
know?
it's a while to let
So
that out. Even if you
John's
brush it.
laughing because his favorite dumplings have these garlic chives in them, right?
My parents grow them. This is kind of that's the thing.
Yes.
But on tango nights, especially when you're at marathons and you're going out for dinner,
Yes.
usually everybody's like, "Can you please don't add onions? Please don't add garlic."
Yes. But you know what's hilarious is that the very first Marathon Z, we went out to an Indian restaurant for dinner, and we all had Indian food that was in this group. And as we were eating it, we were like,
Oh.
oh. And so actually, Marat Erdemsel was at the table with us. He went to CVS to buy us mouthwash before we returned to
That's
the marathon.
amazing.
It was very
Yeah.
kind.
Yeah.
But I did want to throw in here, you mentioned, and just because this was delightful and it just happened, that I was dancing with someone, and when they invited me, they said, "Oh, we could switch," and I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, okay." And so we started out, and then we switched. But then the third song was only 3 song tandas. It was Ocho. And then during the third song, it was their turn to lead. And halfway through, they switched. And I was delighted. I was just so delighted. I think like some beautiful moments come out of that, and having that little interaction and having the space to do
Yeah.
it was really, really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. So we've talked
We
about
have body, like pain in your body or discomfort with the other person's
Mhm.
body, but I think there's a piece that we haven't touched on yet, which for me is like 60% of the reasons why I might say yes or no.
Okay. And what is that?
Music.
Oh gosh.
It's
Let's please talk about this. Let's please talk about this.
it's the
Okay.
music. It's
Okay. But in
okay.
DC right now, and guys, can we change this, please? In DC right
Guys or
now,
leaders?
guys, everybody.
Okay.
This is not leaders. This
people,
is not
people.
as people. I'm a guys, a y'all. Can we change this, please? When the music before it even comes on, before the music has come on, half of the people are paired up, and I'm like,
How do you know?
yeah, how do you even know if you like this set? And there have been some nights that I was like, oh no, I don't want to dance to this music. I don't even no, absolutely not, right? But when one person does it, then somebody else is like, oh, they're snapping up follows. Let me cabaceo somebody, and the music hasn't even started,
Yeah.
and it's creating this strange atmosphere. So can we all just agree to listen and see what's coming?
And just to clarify, yes, we know the order that we know is going to be a tango or
Yes.
valse or milonga. And maybe we have our people that we know, oh, we're doing valse for sure. It doesn't
Yes.
matter what kind of valse. We're doing milonga. It doesn't matter what kind of milonga. But even with tango, one tango to the next can be so drastically
Is
different.
it Biaggi? Is it Desarli? I have different people for Biaggi that I want to dance with.
And
different
it's
people for
like,
Cabaceo.
before I even think about other people, there's different ways. I've noticed now every couple of years, there's like a certain set of orchestras that I gravitate towards, or I've learned a new way to interpret that music or a new way to move my body in space to that music. And so, like, for instance, like in the beginning, Canado, I could dance Canado with anybody. But now when I hear like Canado, something heavy, I want a certain kind of heavy denseness in the movement that, or even like, or OTV. And it's like, I don't want to just do tiki tiki taki taki tiki tiki taki taki.
Yes.
So I know like you might be a great dancer. We've danced well together, but I might say no because I'd rather just sit it out. Or maybe it's like Desarli. Now finally I appreciate doing almost nothing to Desarli or El Señor. I just took the Horacio Godoy musicality classes, so maybe I shouldn't say the D word. I got in trouble for saying it. El Señor. Like I enjoy better to just be in the embrace and to just savor that moment in the embrace and to take juicy steps and to do very little pivoting and like, so if I know you're going to be doing a lot, I'm probably going to say no. And there are moments maybe where you feel like that to dance to that music, but in this moment, that's not how I want to dance to it.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's maybe that people then say, does that count as being snobby, for instance? Because now I'm being selective with how I want to dance.
No, I don't think so. And I think we're going to talk more about like that tango high or tangasm later. I think that the longer you've danced, the harder it is to get to that. And part of like knowing, oh, we hear this the same way is one of those ways to get into that flow, right? I don't think that's being snobby. Like, I really don't. I think also like when you first start, it's about quantity. You got to get your miles and you want to dance, and maybe you're not as familiar with the music or different styles of dance, and so you just need to dance so that you could have a preference, right? You
need
don't
to
have
figure out
any
what your
to
style
figure out,
is.
yes. But then the longer you have danced, then you start to develop preferences. And not to say we should never stray. We can then try other things as well. But like if that Canaro comes on, I probably want to dance with John. Like truly, because I know I really want to dance a specific way, and I know he'll listen to me. Because we've taken seminars and classes together about listening to each other, right? So not to say I won't ever dance it with somebody else, but like most of the time I really want to dance it with John, and it has nothing to do with anybody else. I don't think that's about being snobby. I don't begrudge anybody
But
else.
we're not going to explain this to someone.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
should we start to say, you know what? Actually, I prefer to do X, Y, and Z to this music. So
I mean, maybe if the opportunity presents itself.
it did happen recently. I get actually with a friend of mine, and he's gonna know exactly who he is now. But we were dancing something, and I was like, I just want to dance like slow and take it easy. This is how I feel in this music. And he was like, if I had known this whole time that's what you'd wanted, like I could have accommodated to that. So it had me thinking, like, okay, I'm glad that you can take it that way. I don't think a lot of people have it in them to take it that way. And also, so yes, I see that being a reality, but like it's something that I don't know if it's something that we should expect of everyone or most people, but I watch who people dance with and how they dance with them. And I gauge whether or not stylistically,
if we're the right fit.
If we're the right fit, if I have something to even offer to them, right? Or if they have something to offer, whatever it is. So I think I care and I pay attention to that. And I hope other people pay attention to it. So that person doesn't have to tell me, oh, well, I like X, Y, or Z. I watch and I pay attention.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and so I know our episode's getting long and we have to wrap it up.
Okay.
We're getting the wrap it up signal from John.
Oh, no, we didn't get to the good part.
We do have to talk about, like, if you're watching somebody stylistically as follows, we have to kind of mold into whatever the leader, how they dance, right? Usually it's the like molding to their style, whether they like to dance an open or go a little nuevo and be a little crazy, or they want to be milonguero and snuggly, right? So that makes us more selective because stylistically, maybe it's to an orchestra we want to be milonguero and snuggly, and to something else that we're like, usually it's if I'm not as into the music, I'm open to being a little crazier. Or maybe I'm a lazy dancer. I will admit it. I don't really want to do a million back staccatas or like a million gachos or a million boleros. Like I want just a couple that are musically well placed. And if somebody is flying around the floor doing sliding volcatas, I'm probably not going to dance with them because I'm too lazy. And I will think it's going to be taxing on my body. It's not, I might enjoy watching them, but I would rather mostly snuggle and, just like have a beautiful milonguero dance. So I think we have to be open to the fact that people have stylistic differences, and that is a reason that they say no. And I don't think it's a reason to be offended about it, though.
No. I feel like we've barely touched on this topic, Melody.
I know.
And we have more.
We've been speaking too long, but there's at least another episode.
And we still have to cover how to say no, how to accept when someone says no. And I think we have some additional.
And we have some comments about why other people may choose to reject.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a really good opportunity. Maybe if you can share why you often reject people, or how you feel about rejection. How does it make you feel? And we will bring it up and cover it on the next episode.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to Staying Grounded. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and spread the word. We'll catch you next time.